Ciao, I'm Mario, a Swiss car guy on YouTube, and this is my 2008 Lexus LS600h. And as you may have guessed from the title, this is a video about, I believe, 34 things I hate about this car. And when I say hate, of course, that's clickbait, because I very much love this car, but you could say that I'm a very meticulous or petty person, and even though I deeply love this car, there are a few things I don't like. So these are 34 things I hate about this car. I still love the car, but I think you can love something and still be critical of it, because some of these things I reckon they would have cost absolutely nothing to do better, and yet they didn't. And yes, some of the things that I'm going to mention are very petty, and feel free to comment down below whether you would have mentioned them or not. I do, because this is my video and these are 34 things that I hate about this car. But let's not waste any more time and let's go right into it. The wheels. The wheels on LS600Hs are of bad quality. If you drive the car in winter in heavily salted areas such as Switzerland, they will start to bubble, the paint will start to flake off. These, despite being very dirty, are surprisingly good because I bought them basically almost unused a year ago and they have never seen a winter. But my winter wheels, they are in much worse shape, and it was the same with my Lexus LS430 that I had like 10 years ago. I hope on newer Lexus they've improved this thing, but if you drive in winter, the OEM wheels, they are not good. As long as your headlights are on, the headlight washers will always squirt when you try to wash your windscreen, and they will do so before actually the windscreen gets wet. So you always have like a wet hood, but a dry windshield if you have the lights on, and you cannot turn it off. The LS600H has a small trunk, but I'm not going to complain about this because for me it's not a problem. I am a single person, I usually drive this car alone, it's big enough for me. No, the thing that annoys me is that the trunk opens remotely, but it doesn't close remotely. You can only close it by pressing this button. And this is particularly annoying because sometimes the trunk doesn't close properly. It goes about, halfway down like this, and then it goes back up. And if you notice while you're in the car, you cannot close it. And if you have walked away from the car, then you'll find it like this, with the trunk wide open when you come back, hoping that your stuff has not been stolen. The button to open the trunk from the inside is right next to the fuel filler cap button. So unless you watch really carefully, you can actually push the wrong button and open the fuel filler flap, or vice versa, open the trunk when you want to open the fuel filler. The steering wheel has a couple of buttons. Some of them are useless, like the mode button to switch between CD and radio and stuff like that, or the reset button that resets certain functions on the board computer, which is something you very rarely need, whereas functions that you would need often, such as the heated steering wheel, are not on the actual steering wheel. Also, the buttons for the parking sensor and for the heating steering wheel, they are obstructed by the steering wheel. So if you basically driving the car, you don't see them and you have to actuate them by feel. And unless you know that left is the parking sensor and right is the heated steering wheel, you might get it wrong. There is no way to program the car in any way to have the headlights automatically turn on when you start the car. You always have to do it manually, via the switch. And then when you shut the car off, you have to turn it off, otherwise it keeps beeping at you. In general, there are very few options that can be programmed, like settings in this car. Even using the dealer factory computer, there's basically nothing. For example, the headlights turning on automatically, or other things. For example, in my previous cars, I was able to program the car to beep when you shut it. Or in my SL55 AMG, I was able to program that when you unlock the car, the fog lights turn on, instead of like the main xenon lights, because you don't want to have them turn on and off because it's bad for their durability. So the Germans have a lot of customization options which this car just doesn't offer. The glove box door is loose, and in my case I keep it from rattling by having like this piece of, an old belt or something tucked in between the sides, because without it, it would just That may be a problem just my car has, but still, it annoys me. This car has a cooler in between the rear seats. However, it is, for some reason, only fits cans. And the old style can, not the thin like the Red Bull ones, no, only those. Bottles do not fit because it's basically square and very short. So the usefulness of this is only very limited because on the one hand it's in the back and I'm mostly in the front, but also I don't really use cans. I just bought these because I had the fridge for it, but I don't use them because I don't like open drinks in the car. I would like something I can close off, and I think as a result these cans are expired. Wow. Yes, they expired a year ago in October of 2021. So the rear fridge is basically useless for me. The cup holders in this car are either too shallow or too wide, but I drink bottles like this and they don't really fit. So when you brake, especially if they're full and more top heavy, they will triple over and it's not good. Again, these cup holders seem to be designed for cans. And really, who uses cans in their car? I don't. I only kept these expired cans so I could make this video. This car has screen lockout while you're driving, which means if you are in a menu while you are driving, at a certain speed, the options start to get grayed out and then you can't do anything unless you stop again. And then you can change your settings again. This is very annoying. But it doesn't concern me that much because, well, I've installed the Chrome V-Line, that's in the audio part, and that thing is actually on all the time. It doesn't get grayed out. Even though I have my fancy Android Chrome V-Line 2 player connected to the car, the phone calls, they still work through the car's Bluetooth. And the problem is, when you get a call or when you take a call, then it blocks out the screen. You only get this. And you cannot go back to the audio menu. It only says talking. Climate still works. I think navigation works as well. Well, that's what it is. The phone menu. This car has Bluetooth hands-free phone. It works really well, with one exception. I've never managed to synchronize the phone book. And I'm certainly not going to start now, or am I? Register? Transfer data? What does this even mean? Under transfer. Well, I've never been able to actually transfer it, and it actually doesn't matter because I just start calls from my phone or from Google Assistant, so whatever. The board computer is inaccurate. It shows too low a fuel consumption, and I think on average it's like 1 liter, which is about 8% too low. And I know it's the same in all cars, but it shouldn't be that way because this is connect to the car's ECU. It should know exactly for how long the injector was open and what the capacity of an injector is. It should be actually super precise, but it isn't. If you push the disp button on the steering wheel long, you can enable or disable the background graphics in the little screen in the instrument cluster. That's quite the function there. Very weird, but it's nice to have a button for that on the steering wheel. The auto function that enables or disables outside air coming in is basically useless. Well, it's at least useless for my purposes, which is to detect bad smells and then shut off the outside air. But it doesn't really do that, so you have to detect the bad smells yourself and then do it manually. There is actually an air filter, but as soon as you activate that, the auto function stops working. So I don't understand this because a car I've owned previously had a very good smell detection and it worked basically flawlessly. And that car was a bit older than this and it was a bit more cursed than this, but it worked better. And this auto function, in my view, it's not doing a great job. The graphics in the infotainment look really old school and clunky, and the reason is because this car is actually old school. You have to remember it came out in 2006 and this was before even the first iPhone came out. So this is why everything looks a bit, old-fashioned. But you can actually, I think, change it. You can change between gold and blue, But I personally, even though the blue looks a bit more modern, I prefer the gold because it fits more with the old man style of the car. Also, famous contemporary philosopher Lawrence Thoreau once said, "Always remember the golden rule, the man with the gold rules." I believe he doesn't wear gold anymore, but he probably still pities fools. The side mirror folds down when you reverse in order to help you see the curb, but it doesn't fold down enough. You can manually have it fold down more so that you can actually see the curb, and when you go back into forward gear it goes back to the regular position, but you cannot save the position that you just put the mirror to manually. So this I don't really understand, because even my ancient 996 Turbo had this function, and this car, even though everything is there, you cannot save the down position, which is incredibly annoying. The button for the heated seats and for the cooling, they are right here, and from my seating position I cannot see whether they are on or off, because the LED here gets covered up by the armrest. So yeah, this is a bad piece of design. They could have just turned it around and it would have been better, but this way I always have to lean forwards to see whether it's on or whether it's off. And this is important because when it's like this, it might seem off, and you can also close it down, but if you look at the LED you see, oh no, it's still on actually. So now it's really off. In general, the seating position on this car is not great. It seems the car's been designed for smaller people. I don't want to be stereotypical here, but it seems the Japanese designed this car for the Japanese. Because I'm 1.83 m, I'm not super tall, but you know, I already find some problems with the car. The dash seems too low down, so you feel like you're sitting on top of the car rather than in the car. And I realize this is a sedan and not like a sports car, but I have had other sedans before this. Yes, that one that had a much better seating position. And even for that reason I have the steering wheel too low down, because I like to keep it as vertical as possible. And if I were to put it in a position where it should be so that I get a good view of the instruments, which is here, then it would be like too horizontal for my liking. So the car ergonomically feels like it's not meant for taller people. And especially like with the steering wheel in this position, I cannot see these two buttons. So whenever I engage the heated steering wheel, I don't know which one it is. So I have to basically lean forwards or sidewards in order to read it, which is not great. Also, the seats, they are not great in this car. They weren't great either in the LS430 I had before. Don't misunderstand me, they are not bad seats. They are both heated and ventilated, and they have reasonably nice leather on them. But the level of adjustability they offer is not that good. For example, the Phaeton, a car I used to have a couple of years ago, is basically the same kind of car, a large, heavy, luxurious saloon, but that car had far better seats with way more adjustability. And in this car I drive in a sort of weird seating position because it's the only one I find comfortable. Also, these seats, while being cooled and heated, which is nice, they do not offer any massage. And I believe Lexus to this day still doesn't offer massage on driver's seats. They offer it in the back for the passengers, but not for the drivers, and I wonder why. Maybe the engineers were concerned that if the driver had such a function, he would use it all the time, and therefore leading to premature failing of the systems. But then again, I mean, this car has just a regular lumbar support, and that one failed last year where I made a repair video about this. So this is still something that, I mean, Lexus lacks in comparison to the competition. The LS600h has brake-by-wire, which means that the brakes are electronically actuated and there is no connection between the brake pedal and the actual brakes on the wheels. It's all done through a potentiometer and a brake actuator that does the actual braking. So this brake actuator in these cars has a tendency to squawk. This sound. Squawk or bark or whatever you want to call it. My car has it. If this happened during the warranty period, the brake actuator would have been replaced. It's not a safety issue as it's just a nasty sound it does, but my car does it, and replacing the brake actuator would cost me, I reckon, about 3,000 Swiss francs. Hence, I'm not going to do it. I'm living with the squawk, which, by the way, the car had already when I bought it, and I knew what I was going into. So I can live with it, but it is a bit annoying, and this is a common fault with Lexus LS600Hs and Lexus LS460s. So if you go look at one and it does that, it's a bargaining chip. It's not a safety issue, but you know, it's certainly not as refined as you would like it to be. I can't hear it! Can you hear it now? Yes, the radio doesn't quieten down when you're backing up. And this might seem like a very small quibble I have with the car, but again, my beloved Phaeton had that function, so the radio would actually quieten down when you put the car in reverse, so that you can hear the parking sensors. And in this case, you can't, because also the parking sensors aren't loud enough. You can choose the volume of the parking sensors in 5 levels. This is the highest level, and it's way too low. And just for reference, this is the volume at which I normally listen to music. The car has an auto hold function, which means it will hold the brakes once you push the pedal and then you release it. I almost never use it because it adds a bit of delay, which means when you then start, when you hit the accelerator, it takes like a second. Maybe it's less than a second, but it feels like a second. And it's especially annoying when you're maneuvering, going front, and then you have to wait for the brakes to release. So that's not really a function I like the way it's been implemented. And I think it works with the electronic handbrake, or the electric handbrake, whatever you want to call it, which is fine and dandy, but this car has drive-by-wire. It has electronic brakes, so it should work with the regular brake and not with the handbrake, because the regular brake is already electronically operated. So I don't really see why they would do that. Turns out auto hold doesn't work with the door open. Very interesting. The Lexus LS600H is a wallowy old beast, and it's not very encouraging when you're driving at very high speeds on the motorway. For example, in Germany, I find that above 180 kilometers per hour, the car doesn't really feel well in corners. Even in the large, slow corners, it's just too soft, even in sport mode. This car has adaptive cruise control, but it does not work when the windscreen wiper is at its highest setting, which means even if it's in auto and it goes to the highest setting, the ACC basically stops working. And if you put it back manually to a lower setting, then it magically works again. That's a bit stupid. This car has a bit of ACC problems. I believe it might be broken, or something in the circuit might be broken, because the ACC will randomly deactivate itself. It will either be with, you know, the message, please dealer, blah blah blah, it's broken, whatever. It's always done this, and honestly, every car I've had with ACC has always had something like that, so that doesn't worry me. But this car has the peculiarity that sometimes it just deactivates. The same way it would deactivate if you hit the switch or if you hit the brakes. So without any warning, without any beep beep beep, it just deactivates, which is extremely scary, because if you don't notice, you're going to crash. The cans in the cooler make noise while driving, which is another reason for not keeping cans in the cooler. On my car, the parcel shelf makes noise, because when they replaced the rear struts, which was done before I bought it, they apparently didn't fasten it back properly, and therefore if you drive over potholes and stuff, it makes noise. And I was wanting to fix that myself, but then I realized that you have to take out the back seats for that, and I'm not going to do that. Another thing I reckon might be broken on my car is the heating. I mean, the heating works, but after driving for like 10 minutes, it starts spitting out cold air instead of hot air. It's doing the same thing right now. And then after a while it recovers. So I don't know, maybe I have some issue with the thermostat or something like that, but this is certainly not proper and not right. When braking from higher speeds, the brakes tend to judder, the pedal tends to judder, and sometimes you even feel it in the steering wheel. And you might say, well, yes, you might have warped discs, but then again, it only happens in certain instances and otherwise it's always fine. I think a part of it might be the transition from the regenerative braking to the actual brakes, because this car being hybrid obviously does regenerative braking. So the braking from higher speeds in this car is a bit strange. I hate it. Those cans make a rattle back there. If it were plastic bottles, they wouldn't rattle like metal cans. I mean, seriously, why? I guess I could argue about the quality of the leather on the steering wheel, but I bought this car with 160,000 kilometers and the steering wheel was also quite abused. I reckon one of the previous owner wore rings, so I cannot really attest to the quality or not. I've repainted it twice and it's worn off again, so I might have to do that, but I reckon the steering wheel might not have had the greatest leather quality. Another peculiarity of the Lexus LS600h with its CVT instead of a regular gearbox is that if you're on a steep gradient like I am right now, it's the entrance to my garage, the automatic will not hold the car, because if I release the brake now, I roll backwards, which is scary because every other automatic has a pin that holds the car in place. Sure, you could activate the auto hold, then it will hold, but then again you have that stupid delay. But it's quite interesting that the automatic itself will not hold gear and roll back. That's very, very unexpected to anybody driving a car like this for the first time, because you just expect it to hold steady, which it doesn't. So that's it, 34 things I hate about my Lexus LS600h. A car that, let me state it again, I really, really love, but I still think some things should have been better. But let me know, do you agree with my findings, or what are the things that annoy you, that you hate about your car, especially if it's a car you deeply, deeply love? Always comment down below. I'm very interested to read your comments. Follow me on Instagram at SwissCarGuyMario for more regular updates, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see possibly more about this car and certainly more about this guy. And leave a like if you like this video. But this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.